Okay, everyone. This is the International Women's Day interview series that I'm doing where I get to interview women that I admire, some that I really, really love. I'm going to basically do this instead of celebrating International Women's Day. We're going to make a whole month out of it, which, if you're watching along, you've seen a few of these videos. Today's interview is very special because I'm interviewing my college roommate. So I'm so excited. So Anya, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself and tell us who you are, and then I'll take it back and I'll ask some questions.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Thanks for asking me to be a part of this. This is so crazy over the years to be able to connect like this and share. So it's so good to see your face. Thank you for asking me for this. So my name is Ondie Mitchell. I was born in a small town in West Tennessee, Savannah, Tennessee, and I live in Hendersonville, Tennessee. That's just north of Nashville. And I've lived here the majority of my adult life. I moved here when I was 22, and I'm now 49. And so yeah, that's where I live. So Tennessee has obviously been my home, but I love to travel and visit, and we'll have to come see you very soon too,
Yes.
especially in that cool house with you. So we met in college at a Freed-Hardeman, and we were roommates. So lots of great memories and inside jokes and wonderful times. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a little bit about just my
Yeah.
background.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, Anya and I went to school together in Tennessee, and she was my, I think, third roommate. Apparently, I was a girl who couldn't keep a roommate because then Anya left me to go do student teaching, and I was by myself.
How dare me?
How dare you? But what I know for sure is if you live with an education major, your closet is full of strange things like pizza boxes, fraction lessons from French fry cartons. Like you just don't know what you need. And if you are a business major, you get the fun of getting to like grade papers at night. Well, education major friends are like, I'm behind and grade some papers.
So
Okay.
great.
And like
That
you
is so great.
play teach.
Yes. I forgot about those pizza boxes. That's amazing.
Shoved into your closet or little baby closets that now would not fit half my clothes, right?
Not even a
Oh, I
fraction.
love it. I don't know how two people live in a room that small, much like you have to really like each other.
Yes.
So,
Definitely.
so while we were at school, Andy met and fell in love with the wonderful Chuck Mitchell. And I'll tell a little joke about that. She would do Chuck's laundry, and so we began using that as a euphemism for that's who you're dating. I'll do his laundry, and so that has carried forward in the years among our friend group. I do his laundry, but not that she was doing his laundry back then, but she was literally, um,
Right. Yes.
literally
Literally did the
in the
laundry.
coin operated machines downstairs.
Right. I did make him bring his own coins though. So there was that,
You had boundaries.
I had boundaries even then.
No, I love it. But Chuck was this super smart, he had this serious demeanor, but was hilarious and dry wit, a lot of fun. And Andy met and married him, but has now been sort of going through a bit of a grief journey. So I would love for you to kind of talk a little bit about what's happened, and what that's been like. So, and I'll kind of interject along the way as well.
Sure, sure. Yes, it's interesting because you knew us when, right? You knew us back then when. And so I'm 49, Chuck was 52, and when he passed. And so I'll go ahead and lead with that. He did pass away in September of last year after a long battle with a rare genetic neurological disorder for which there's no cure. It's called spinocerebellar ataxia type 2. It's very specific.
Yeah.
It's a mouthful. And so it's one of the rare diseases that fits in with the courts registry. And when I met Chuck at Freed-Hardeman and got to know his family, we knew that his dad had a condition, right? But the family didn't speak to that much. And so they just thought that it went male to female, male to female. And so since his dad only had sons, they just thought, okay, so it will end. But as I came to become a part of that family, I started realizing, wait a minute, there are some things that are showing up that it's not right.
Mhm.
So I got his dad into Vanderbilt, which is a big university hospital here in the Nashville area, and got a true diagnosis for what it was. And soon after that, that would have been 2006. So our son Cade had just turned 4 years old. And soon after we got that diagnosis, Chuck got really quiet, which is not like Chuck at all to get really quiet.
Right.
And I said, "What's up?" And he said, I think I need to be tested for that too. And so I said, "Tell me a little bit about why." And he told me what he was feeling. And so I said, "Of course, well, we'll get you tested. We'll see
Yeah.
what's going on." Well, the testing, especially back then, it took a month to hear back from the blood work because they knew exactly which protein on which gene to isolate for the mutation. So already you're thinking, okay, I've got a month to wait to find that out.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they did a baseline MRI because the cerebellum of the brain shrinks. So when you think of ataxia, think of a combination of Parkinson's and dementia put
Okay.
together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So every part of the gross and fine motor were impacted. So the baseline MRI did show characteristics of that his cerebellum was already looking older, much older than what he actually was. So
Right.
we kind of had that gut feeling about it.
Yeah.
Well, then the diagnosis came in November of 2006.
Mm.
Um, when we married, I taught middle school here in Hendersonville, right? So, and it took us a long time to have the one son, the one child that we do have, Cade. Cade is now 21 years old. So it took us a
And,
long time
and he's
to have.
gorgeous.
He's good. Well, I might think so, but I might be a little bit partial. His hair is like,
I'm pretty
rock.
sure he got his hair from me. I'm not sure how,
I think
but
so too. Aunt Leah. He got that from Aunt Leah. So yes, he's awesome. And he's a drummer, so that's
oh,
great.
love
So
it. Love it.
yeah. So I taught about 5 years of middle school. And then when Cade was born, I wanted to stay home with him, but I worked from home in order to
Mhm.
do that too, right?
Mhm.
So because as women, as much as we do everything that we can to help
Yeah.
support the family.
Yeah.
And so I did that, got my master's in administration, and right after Chuck's diagnosis came back that he did in fact have this disorder, I went back to do my student principalship.
Mhm.
And she offered me a job the first day back, and it was just too good to pass up, knowing that Chuck now had,
Yeah.
or we knew that he had this disorder.
Yeah.
So that began my journey into administration. So I've been a principal since 2006. So
Yeah.
I taught for 5 years, and now I've been an administrator.
Yeah.
And it moved from me being the primary breadwinner to being the only breadwinner for a
Yeah.
family of three.
Right.
And so that, like a lot of women feel, brought with it a lot of guilt, I think, a lot of struggle about the
Yeah.
time that it takes to really become to move up in your profession, the things, the expectations that you have, not only from outside, but also from myself, because you know me, but you know that I'm pretty driven, and I don't want to do anything halfway, right? But
Right.
then I constantly battled that guilt of like, okay, my family is needing this, the school is needing this. How can I, and then what do I need? And
Right.
honestly, somewhere along that journey, sometimes you lose sight of yourself and what your goals and aspirations and what you truly need and want are. But I
Mhm.
think a lot of women that we go through that no matter the circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, so Chuck was diagnosed in 2006, and from with this particular type of ataxia, they typically say there's no what is it, crystal ball to
Right.
know.
Right.
But typically the average lifespan from the onset of symptoms is 15 to 20 years,
Okay.
roughly.
Okay. Mhm.
Okay, so 2006, and then he had to give up the work that he did because it got too unsafe for him, and
Mhm.
he was at home more. Well, I try to look at the positives of that though too, that he got to be there with Cade.
Yeah.
And back when he could still drive, he would pick him up at school because, when you're also your son's principal, he's got a whole nother element of that going on, right? And so he and Chuck got to spend so much quality time together,
Oh,
and I'm grateful for that.
right.
Now, I'm gonna be truthful, and women, I think you can relate. I got tired sometimes of being the bad guy because I was the disciplinarian, I was the breadwinner, I was the cook, I was the ATM, I was all of that because
Yes.
I'm a human too, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
and then they were more like brothers, and I'm like, wait a minute, I have one child, not two. I'm married to you, so I need you to
I
step
am
back.
not your mother. I am yours.
I did do your laundry then, and I'm still doing it now,
Yeah.
but I need to be a daddy too. So, and I think that's one thing, Leah, that a lot of people, it's hard to balance when you're in the role of a caregiver and
Mhm.
you know that your spouse has this disorder, right? And you know that certain things can impact him, but then also too, you can't excuse all the stuff because not everything was related to the disorder, you know?
Some
And
of it was
just
just Chuck being Chuck.
exactly, exactly. And you're like, "Wait a minute, let's back that train
Yeah,
up." So, yeah,
yeah.
and I think that that's something that, sometimes people might not have understood,
Right.
or I worried that they might not, because they see this man in a wheelchair, and then they might not understand why, well, "Oh, just
Giving
poor
him the
pitiful."
business. Right.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, it was. It was for him, but, there was also the time when it
Yeah.
was like, "Okay, that's not related to this disorder, and
Right.
we're gonna have a conversation about this." So
Right.
already there are more balls to juggle,
Right.
right? When you're thinking
Yeah.
about that dimension of it.
Yeah.
And I think honestly though, for me, grieving started the day that he was diagnosed.
Mm,
Because in life we don't just grieve death, right? We grieve losses of relationships or losses of friendships or changes and things like that. But I think for me, knowing that his dad had this disorder and that I had seen the that part, the grieving process began for me, because then not only was it that, it was also then, did Cade inherit it? Because we didn't know, we didn't know. And so Cade was 4 at the time that Chuck was diagnosed.
mhm.
Because of ethical implications, they wouldn't test him until he was 18 and could sign for it for
Oh my
himself.
goodness, that's such a
So
long
for 14 years, I had to live with that in the back of my mind and just pray about it all the time,
time.
because there was actually a little bit higher than a 50% chance he had inherited it, because it was from the father, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this disorder, that each generation that inherits it, it's sooner and more aggressive.
Okay.
So Chuck's progression became much more accelerated than what we saw in his dad.
Yeah.
So his dad passed away only 4 years before Chuck did,
Wow. Okay.
and he was in his, like, about 72,
Yeah.
and Chuck was 52.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that was different. And, so I continued to work because I needed to. I continued to stay active with church, and we just kept going, right? Because
Mhm.
that's what you do. Travel was important to us, and
Yeah.
even when he was wheelchair bound, I worked with, the National Ataxia Foundation. I would speak for them, and
Yeah.
speak for their conferences, and speak some, even on Capitol Hill with them, to try to
Mhm.
get some legislature passed
Right.
to help, because these rare diseases don't get as much
Right.
funding for research, obviously.
Right.
So I turned my focus more to how can we improve the quality of life
Right.
for those that are living with the disorder. So I
Yeah.
would speak about, when you're traveling, what do you ask for? How do you advocate for your needs, like beach wheelchairs? And
Yes.
it
I
gave me
loved
a
I loved seeing your pictures, the
did
times when
you?
you would go places and he got to be in it. Like it wasn't like you're not left behind as the family member,
Right.
right? And that's because it is a family vacation. Right. I just
Exactly.
remember being like, yes, because I know how much you both love the beach and the water and all of that, that I was like,
Mhm.
okay, there's a way to do this. And you don't know, as an
Mhm.
outsider, you don't always know how you would navigate that. So
Mhm.
watching you all and seeing how you would post pictures and being like, yes, I was always glad that Chuck wasn't hiding and not allowing
Mhm.
pictures and,
Right.
which I loved
Mhm.
that. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but I did love
No, I'm so glad
like we
that
got
you
to be on the adventure with you.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's Chuck. He loved to be the center of attention, even though so that was
True.
yeah, yeah, he did. Like, even I one of the cruises that we took, and you're pushing the wheelchair, and you're getting the beach wheelchairs, and then we stopped at port, right? They're always hitting you with this, this, and he would say, "Okay, don't make eye contact. Don't make eye contact." And the next thing I know, he's like, "Hey, check out this hat." I'm like,
You're like, Chuck.
okay, well, all right. First of all, that's a women's hat, but if you really like it, then I suppose, we can do that. Well, take my picture in it. Okay, you got it. So, and yes, so yeah, I love that you saw that too, because
Yeah.
it was important to keep going. And I think for us it became just a part of our life. And
Yeah.
so we didn't think about it being an add-on. It was just
Yeah.
a part of what we were used to.
Sure.
Was it difficult? Absolutely. There's nothing easy about that. But at the same time, you pick up, you go, and you think about and focus on the blessings that you have,
Yeah.
instead of just the burdens,
Yeah.
because so much of life, is based on the mindset that you keep, the
Mhm.
the way that you view these things. So
Yeah.
yeah, so then as his disease progressed, and Cade got older, thankfully about the time Cade could start driving is about the time Chuck had to stop driving.
Okay.
And I think that was a huge blow to him, to not be able to drive. And but again, they had that bonding time together. And as the disease continued to progress, I had to make some adjustments in my career for just a little bit. I
Mhm.
had to step down from a lead position
Okay.
of main building level principal,
Yeah.
and we stepped away for a year and moved to my hometown just for a
Yeah.
year to try to make it to where I could be more present for
Okay.
him.
Mhm.
And we even built a home because we used to flip homes. That's another thing we did in all our spare time. But we would flip homes, and I love to decorate. I love to do
Yeah.
that. So I took bits and pieces of what I had thought along the way, like I want this, I would not want this, and
Yeah.
got to actually design the home and work with the contractor and do
Oh,
all of that to make it a handicap friendly home that didn't look like a handicap home,
right.
So
Right.
then people would come and visit that place to get ideas. And I loved that. I
Oh,
loved
I
being
love
able
that.
to share that,
Yeah.
and people come and visit it and see, okay, wait, okay, yeah, I used concrete floors so that the wheelchairs didn't mess it up. So even through that, trying to share ideas. We were
Yeah.
very much open books about it.
Yeah.
But as Cade turned 20, well, he was turned 21 2 days before Chuck passed, but we were still in Savannah for just again that year. And I was working with the school system in the district down there helping do some things. But Cade wanted to move back up here, right? Well, that's where he grew up, and I get that.
Yeah.
But he was our only child, and he and Chuck were super close. And as Chuck was grieving his moving, I had to make that decision. Do I uproot again and come back? Or, so lots and lots. Honestly, this past year has been filled with
Yeah.
lots of change.
Yeah.
So, and that's okay. That's part of life. But ultimately, when I left this district where I am now, they had told me they knew I didn't leave because I was mad. And
Right.
they told me if I ever wanted to come back, they would have a place for me, which made me feel so humbled that they would be willing to do that, right? So in the span of 2 weeks time, we made the decision to move, put the house on the market, got the apartment up here, got the job, sold everything there,
Oh my God.
packed what we had left into a U-Haul, and we're back here in Hendersonville,
Yeah.
right? So only
Yeah.
gone a year. And Cade wanted to be Chuck's caretaker during the day when I was at
Okay.
work.
Okay.
When Cade graduated from high school, he didn't want to go on to school at the time because he loves to play the drums. And so it worked out. I thought, well, okay, if that's really what he wants to do, then I'm not having to pay a caregiver during the day.
Yep.
Then, and he'd rather be with his dad. His dad would rather be with him. So they did that. But we got back here in June. Chuck had to go into hospice care in July, but not for end of life, but more for extra support,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Um, and he had to be catheterized at that point because
Okay.
Chuck,
Yep.
it was getting harder for me to lift him, to
Yeah. Of
hold him
course.
for all of the different things, and for
Right.
Cade too. But I had gone to take care of some things out of town on Labor Day weekend when Cade called me and said that Chuck had. He said, "Dad's just not himself." He said, "He's not quite himself." I said, "Well, did he just wake up? Sometimes he might be a little more out of it.
Yeah.
Let's keep a check on it." And then the next day, he said, "Okay, he's better." I said, "Great," because I
Okay.
was coming home on Monday.
Yeah.
Well, Sunday night he called again and he said, "Mom, Dad is just not himself." I said, "I'm concerned it could be a UTI. Let's call
Okay.
the hospice nurses."
Yeah.
So hospice got some medication started, and I said, "I'm coming home tomorrow anyway." And um, one thing led to another, and um, UTIs just make people out of their heads, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
especially if you see that a lot with the older population, but
Yeah.
even with those that have disorders.
Yeah.
And the hospice nurse came and stayed on Tuesday while I was at work, and he slept the whole day. So that we thought, okay, good, the medicine's working.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
were giving him some comfort meds. Well, Wednesday, when I got home from work, I said, no, something's not right. I knew
Okay.
that the output was different. I knew that he was just wild all over the place. And
Okay.
so I called 911. We had paramedics in here. We got him to the hospital, and he had gone septic. He did have a
Okay.
UTI, and he went
Okay.
septic.
Okay.
And I was trying to keep him, contained until they could get him comforted.
Mm.
And so we were hopeful, that he would come through that, and we knew
Sure.
that after that he would have to go into skilled care.
Right.
So we had
Right.
resigned ourselves to that fact.
Yeah.
So I had to start looking for those things. So we were in the hospital for 3 weeks
Mhm.
and thinking that he was gonna get better. So I would go to work, I could go straight back to the hospital, sleep
Yeah.
maybe 2 hours a night, come home, shower, lather, rinse, repeat. But you
Right.
think, "Okay, you can do that for the short term."
Right.
Well, about 3 weeks in, we knew. I knew he didn't want a feeding tube, and I knew he didn't want to go on the vent. He had made those wishes known.
Yeah.
And when the doctors told me they tried everything that they could, and he developed a fungal pneumonia, and that
Okay.
attacked his organs.
Yeah.
And we tried this the NG tube, that didn't work.
Yeah.
and we had to make that decision to move him into a hospice care facility that
Yeah.
ironically was the same one in which his dad was, and he was 2 doors down from where his dad was. And so, but there was some beautiful irony in that too, because he and his dad were so close, and
Yeah, I
man, did they ever
remember.
look alike.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
They looked so much alike. It was hilarious. But to watch Chuck go over the years from being the jokester and the prankster that he was, and being the one to do the flips on the trampoline and the swimming like a fish, to being wheelchair bound, and
Yeah.
watching him start to withdraw and start to feel insecure because his
Yeah.
speech was impacted.
Sure.
That was a hard thing, but I was so grateful, ever so grateful for those friends of ours that would continue to include us and include him, because I think that's something that happens and people don't intentionally do it.
Sure.
But when you have friends that have special needs,
Yeah.
or where it's not just as easy as like, hey, let's go downtown and try this new restaurant out. Let's go do
Exactly.
that.
Right.
Because I'm going to see, is it handicap friendly? Can I get the wheelchair there? How far is the parking? What if
Right.
it's raining? And so there tends to be sometimes a pulling back from
Right.
people, and it's not intentional. It's not,
Mhm.
they don't mean it to be that
People
way.
don't know what to do, right? Like they tend to not. And so their reaction, instead of saying, what can I do, is to just stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 And with that can come a sense of isolation, not just for the person that feels that way, but also for the family as a whole. Now,
Sure. Sure.
I still had work and I was still going out and seeing people
Sure.
and interacting, but I knew that isolation was there for him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we spent about a week in hospice, and Kate and I were with him. When he passed, we had friends and family were able to come in and visit, tell stories and laugh, and just like you would have wanted it to be.
Yeah.
I made them promise me he wouldn't be that he wouldn't suffer, and
Sure.
they were wonderful there at
Yeah.
hospice. But when you're there for a week and a day, actually, and you know why you're there, it
Yeah.
can really start to impact you. And then
Yeah.
you're putting that alongside the fact that our son is turning 21 2 days before his
Yeah.
dad's passing.
Yeah.
And you start to think, okay, this is a big dream, and I'm going to wake up from it, but then like I've got to keep moving. I had to
Yeah.
plan the funeral during that week. I had to pick out funeral plots, and I was 48 at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
thinking, I'm not supposed to be doing this,
This is
and you're
not what
going,
this is not the plan. This is not the,
no, no, we're
yeah.
not supposed to. We were supposed to get to do these things, and we are supposed to get to go and do. And so you're swirling around all these thoughts, random, things from flooding back happy memories to bitterness over what could have been, or why does it have to be this way?
Right.
And we're human, right? And we
Yeah.
fight those
Of
battles.
course.
So,
Of course.
so it's where do you dig in, and where do you get and for me, my source of strength came from my faith. It
Yeah.
came
Of
from
course.
family. It came from friends. And so we were with him when he passed. I had asked that it just, at that point be Kate and Chuck and me, because it was the three of us, the
Yeah.
majority of the time.
Yeah.
So
Of
we were
course.
with him, we were holding him, and
Yeah.
just encouraging him on that journey, telling him how proud we were of him. And I don't think he ever really understood exactly how much of an impact he did make
Right.
to everyone. People would see him and draw courage and draw strength
Yeah.
from him,
Totally.
and that he would still be a cut up too. And I loved that, that
Yeah.
he would still do that. So,
So
so
I
that
want to
grief,
interject something there. I just want to interject
sure,
on
sure,
that
yeah.
topic. I mean, Chuck and I, our relationship was about you, right? I was your roommate, he was your boyfriend. But the one thing I can say about Chuck is I always knew he respected me. Like he
Mhm.
treated me with respect. He knew I was intelligent. We were both,
Mhm.
business majors, and we had, but when several years before he passed, I donated some money or something to something you guys were doing. And he messaged me and said, "Thank you so much. I'm so proud of what you do. And I'm
Mhm.
so grateful that you would think of me." And I was like, there's a lot of words for me and Chuck, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, thanks, Chuck. Right. And but there was this little exchange. And I just remember being like his words were meaningful and impactful because they were not throwaway with me. Right.
Yeah.
They were like, hey, thank you for this. I'm proud of who you've become and what I'm seeing you do. And
Uh-huh.
it's like, oh, right. Thanks, Chuck.
But
Right. But I mean, it's him. That's who he is, right? And was. And so I just wanted to stop and say that, like, he did make an impact in huge ways and small ways along those years. And I think it's just a lovely part of who he was.
I'm so glad that you shared that with me,
Yeah.
because he would do things like that that I might not know about, and I loved that. I loved
Yeah.
I loved that he did that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he did mean that. He was sincere.
Yeah,
And
totally. So it was very,
yeah.
very sweet. And I was like, well, look at Chuck sharing his
That's so
feelings.
cool. Going from having his laundry done to actually being
Look at that.
being a
I'm
wordsmith.
I'm curious for you, what was how did you surround yourself and who did you surround yourself with for you? I mean, obviously Chuck had people he needed and friends that showed up for him, and Kate had friends and people, but for you, how did you surround yourself with people to kind of hold you up through these years?
Through these years.
Yeah.
Um, wow. Obviously family, but with my family living in West Tennessee, and me being just north of Nashville, there were friends that became like family.
Sure.
There were connections like we have,
Sure.
from college days still
Yeah.
too. Um, excuse me. A lot of colleagues actually
Sure.
became friends
Yeah.
that knew about our story and would be there to bolster us too. So honestly, and lots of
Of course.
church friends and support too. So I would glean that from different pockets of here and there.
Right.
I think that maybe since his passing, I have kind of started to um, think about the next steps in my journey,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's you go through those motions, you go your day to day, and you're not exactly sure when this is going to happen, and
Right.
but you know that more than likely this is going to be the outcome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then when it does and it happens quickly like that, because
Mhm.
that was an acute episode, and we honestly thought that there might be acute episodes like that,
Yeah.
but it would be protracted
Culminate.
over.
Yeah. Over
Yes.
time. Yeah.
So then that happened, and we know one of the things that we believe that we know is we know that he's not suffering anymore. We know that he is made whole again, and
Yeah.
that helps a lot.
Yeah.
That helps a
Of
lot.
course.
But one of the things that I think is an interesting thing is when I was 48 and I turned 49 in December, and people don't often think of widows being this
No, you're a
age,
young woman, right? Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And it's like, and I know it happens when people lose family members in military or to diseases.
Right.
It's just not usually as common because probably when you and I were growing up, we thought about the widows at church or whatever being like these
80.
200-year-old women,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. You rock on in their walkers, right? That's not where you're at.
Exactly. That's
Exactly.
not where I am. And so I've had to struggle a lot with internally, like, what is the expectation, right? What is
Yeah.
the expectation of how a widow my age acts, because
Mhm.
knowing that in a society where we're quick to judge each
Yeah.
other, like,
Of course.
oh, well, she's not in sackcloth and ashes, so she must not miss him,
Mhm.
or she's doing this. So, and there are some days where, it just hits deeper than others. So it was about allowing myself that time to grieve and to realize some of that felt like an out of body experience. And I
Mhm.
think that's the way you get through some of that.
Yeah.
But continuing to be aware and being selective. So, like that saying, 4 quarters are better than 100 pennies sometimes. It's choosing in whom do I invest my time, and whom do
Yes.
I invest whose opinions do I value? Because we all have different opinions, right?
Sure.
So, for me, an outlet was always work, whether I realized that or not,
Right. Right.
and the colleagues that I made there. And I love to exercise. So I had started going to a gym last year, taking some time each night. Cade would stay with Chuck, so
Yeah.
I could go to the gym and work out and have some time for me.
Yeah.
And because that still sounded selfish to me to take some time for me. But when you layer in that I had a few surgeries during Chuck's illness too, wherein I almost died with some emergency surgeries.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then you add that component to it. So I thought I've got to take care of myself, or
Yeah.
I'm not going to be here to take care of my family.
Right.
So
Right.
allowing myself to do that. Well, since then, I had always wanted to dance, and
I love
I
that.
yeah, and so I had never danced with a human before. Chuck, even when he could have, wouldn't dance with me. And so only in the mirror, right? And I'm making
Only for
myself
making music.
only, and that was from what, the hips down or hips up or
Hips up.
something.
Hips up,
It's,
Ondie. Not hips
it's
down. Hips
you
up.
know, it's the arms.
Good church girls do not shake their hips. Neither do
That's
good church
right.
boys.
But when you have hips, it's kind of hard to not, even when I walk,
They
they
kind of do the
right?
thing, right? Okay, so
Exactly.
dancing, you're dancing.
Yeah, so about the middle of, or right before Thanksgiving, I was thinking, oh, I'm doing this salsa. I thought, let me go check out this studio here in Hendersonville and just see if they do salsa lessons,
Right.
right? Not
Hey,
knowing that when I walked in that door and mentioned that this whole new thing was going to open up. And so the owner of the studio was there, and he said, okay, yeah, let's kind of do an introductory thing. Let me see what you're, and talking to me about why I was there. And I was expressing, my husband had passed away. I am looking to express myself, feel, just, emote and the exercise, those kind of things. So as we started, he's like, "Oh wow, so you've had dance lessons before?" And I laughed at it. I said,
you're like,
"I
nope.
know." I said, "That's what I told him." I said, "I've never danced with a human." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yes, myself in the mirror. That's it." And he was like, "Well, you've got natural." So I was like, "So will one of these people be my instructor?" And he was like, "No, no, I think I want to be your instructor." He
I
said, "I
love
think
it.
you've got natural." And I was like, "Yeah." He
It's
said,
just that.
and then I do have another partner there too. But so one thing led to another, and within 2 weeks, they asked me to be in this competition. And I
Oh
was
my
like,
goodness.
a competition? What? And so I had learned 10 different types of Latin and ballroom dancing in 6 weeks, and
Oh,
had a competition that beginning of February in the Nashville area with people from all over that had come from the South, and I danced 102 dances in one day from 8:30 until 5 o'clock. And then I got to go upstairs and shower, and we came back
okay.
down for a banquet. So then they're starting with awards, and there was a couple and I was clapping for them. It was a partnership. And then the next thing I know, my name is called and I'd won the top thing. And I went, what? I was like,
Is there
oh, this is
another
like an
Ondie
Oscar
Mitchell?
moment.
Such
And
a
I come
such a
on.
common name, Ondie Mitchell.
Exactly. Yes.
With
And
an
so
O.
exactly. I'm doing it. Oh, and what the viewers can't see right now is that I'm 5'1" on a good day, right? So I'm standing next to
Yes.
these 6
Ondie
foot
makes
tall
me
women.
feel tall at 5'5".
Yes, yes. When I'm looking up at the students and I'm like, "You want to rethink that?" They're like, "Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yes,
ma'am."
ma'am.
Look
Yes,
at
ma'am.
you. Yeah. So
I
I
love
I
it.
got to do that, and I was like, "That is insane," right? So, but now I'm going to get to go on a pro-am tour of the Caribbean later in the spring with dance, and tour 4 different countries and get
Love it.
to express myself that way. So, and I've met more people through that.
Of course.
So,
So
when you
another support system
yes,
kind of comes
yeah.
forward. Yeah.
Exactly.
I
And,
love it.
I get my energy from other people, but there are also those times when I need that solitude too, to be alone with my music, to be alone with exercising. But just the other thing I think about too is being an open book and sharing the journey that Chuck and I had together,
Yeah.
and Kate, well, all three
Love
of
it.
us really, 'cause it was a whole family piece.
Yeah. Love it.
Um, to share that with others and to be able um, to let them know they're not alone, right? Because when
Right.
we feel alone and isolated, that's when fear and bitterness and anger can really creep
Uh,
in. And we wanted to share that with others. And I want to continue to share that with others who are going through situations.
yeah.
And on that positive note, though, when Cade did get tested at 18, um, and he asked, could they call me with the results instead of him? And I was
Right.
like, of course.
Yeah.
So I knew the time was coming for us to find out that answer. And I just had that intuition. I thought, I'm just going to call and see if they've heard. And they were like, oh, yeah, we tried to call you this morning. And I was like, no, no, you didn't. I have no missed
I
call.
would
No.
answer. Right.
Nobody knows. And they're like, okay, we'll have a nurse call you back. So I'm at work at dismissal, and the office staff all knew that I was waiting on. And so when I looked down, I stepped into my office. I still remember the wall at which I was looking, and I had to give off
Yeah.
his social number and all that stuff. And I remember them saying, well, we were just calling to let you know that he does not have it, that it's negative. And I went, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I said, you're saying he does not have it. And then at that point, I remember just literally falling across my
Yes.
desk.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that sounds dramatic,
No,
and I
but
didn't intend for it to be, but the relief of 14 years of knowledge, because he was 4 at diagnosis, 14 years of that, just honestly, I think I breathed for the first time in
yeah.
14 years, and
Yeah.
the tears started coming, and the nurse on the other line, and she just started crying for us.
Yeah.
So, and then
That's
I
so,
was
I'm
like
so glad. So
sobbing.
glad.
And I thought, oh no, the office staff is going to think it's bad news. So I swung over and I said, all I could choke out was, doesn't have it. It's good, and they're like, so they're all
And
crying.
now
We're
everybody
all
else is crying. Exactly.
Exactly. And I
Oh,
still remember that I couldn't even wait to drive across town to tell them. So I FaceTime he and Chuck and Cade
yeah.
go together. And I remember that when I told them, you don't have it, that Cade went like this and the tears started coming because he was so relieved.
Yeah.
And I just remember Chuck's smile being so big. And he was like, I will count my life a success.
Oh,
And yeah,
I
because
love that.
you could pass it on,
Yeah.
So
You didn't have to
those
carry
are,
that as well as the,
yes,
you know,
yes,
the path he was already on. That's so,
exactly,
oh,
exactly.
I
So
love that. Thank you for coming back to that. I was going to ask. That was something I was going to ask you.
yeah, yeah, that cliffhanger. I couldn't leave
Yeah.
that for
If you hadn't answered, I would have gotten a million questions about that and been like, oh, he's fine. He's fine. He's
He's
fine.
right. He's right. He's right. He's good.
So one
But
last question, because we need to wrap it up. If you were gonna looking back to the Ondie I knew at 20, at 18, 19, and 20, and you were
Mhm.
gonna give her some bit of advice that you think might actually help people that are listening now, young women that are listening
Mhm.
now, what would that piece of advice be?
Mm. Um, Even if I went back just a tad further than that,
Sure.
maybe, like to middle school, high school,
Yeah.
and then bringing that up to what you asked, I would say don't give people power over you by hearing what they say or being, there's what's that Mean Girls thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with people who are there to build you up, not tear you down. Don't let comments that you might hear about you and you might not have even heard them yourself blow that off. Just tune that out. Stay, and thank goodness in some ways that social media wasn't the thing that it
Oh, I
was
think that
growing
all the
up.
time.
I think
Oh,
they're battling that a lot more in there, those digs,
yes.
but celebrate each other and find people that celebrate with you and aren't critical of you to your face or behind your back, and don't give that power because they're out living their lives, and even as an adult now people are going to
Yeah.
so don't give them that power, because think about whose opinion of you really matters.
Yep.
Think about where you draw your energy and in your faith what sustains you,
Yeah.
and just do know that people are going to judge you no matter what,
Yeah.
but they don't live in your head, they don't live in your heart, they don't live in your home.
Right.
And it's easy to say, oh well, I would never. That's another thing. I never say never.
No,
Because
never.
it will come
It's a
back and
bad
bite you in
idea.
the so quickly.
Yeah,
but
I
but
love that.
is to just not give people power
Yeah.
to make you think differently of who you are. Celebrate who you are, and surround yourself with people that are going to build you up and keep it real, but build you up and be there for you, and laugh
Yes.
every chance you
Every
get.
chance you
Laugh.
get. Exactly.
Life is too short and it's too precious, so
Yeah.
laugh.
No,
Laugh.
and I love that advice. I think that I always talk about that I have lots of friends that I love.
Mhm.
The table that can meet and have an opinion is very small.
Yes, I
Right?
love that.
Small
Mhm.
table, and those people are handpicked. And when I ask them, I want the truth, even if they don't think I'm doing a good thing, they can tell me that.
Yes.
I may still do whatever I want. The likelihood
Yeah.
that I'm still going to do whatever I want is high.
Uh-huh.
But I will take advice from a select group of people.
Mhm.
Everyone else's
Mhm.
opinion is not, I'm not asking. Thank you very
Mhm.
much.
That's
Right.
right.
And if you have one, that's fine. I don't need to hear it.
That's right.
Right. And then I think the laughter thing is so important. I mean,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
can honestly say today we've had fun, even though the topic has been heavy, because that's how we
Yeah,
are. Um,
that's right.
so
Mhm.
I mean, I just think that when I think about being a teenager who was going away to school and trying to figure their life out, and I had all kinds of stuff that I wasn't ready to talk about yet from my background, but I had
Right.
friends who would
Mhm.
laugh with me and who would cry with me, but the laughter was always enmeshed. We would laugh and cry and be
Yes.
in that
Yes.
sync together. And that was when I think about the year we lived together, I think of that, right? Like you're in a
Yeah.
tiny space. There has to be a lot of laughter and a little bit of crying, right?
That's right.
And we got to take a phone call from Chuck every night before bed.
That's that's true. We did.
Hold
It's
on,
true.
we got to talk to Chuck. It's time for bed.
Say hi to Leah. Say hi to
Hey, Chuck, she's right here. That was my job. She's right
Leah.
here. Hold on, let me
Before
yell down the.
polarizing.
Hold on, she's down the hallway. Let me yell down the door, down the hallway. Auntie, it's Chuck.
How dare you not be in that room? You know I'm calling.
We have to go. This was so much fun. Thank you for sharing your story. It is, when I asked, I was sort of like, are you ready to talk about it with random strangers?
Oh,
No.
yeah.
But thank you for being willing to talk about this, because I think it's so important, and so many people are going, women will experience this at different stages of their life. And I think it's important that it's one diverse story in a myriad of stories. So thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate you.
So if you're watching, there is a QR code in the corner of this little box where you can donate money to the Malala Fund, and that fund helps educate women and girls all over the world, some in impoverished countries where women and girls aren't often educated, and some in other countries where we're elevating STEM and educating girls to do more engineering and math and science and technology jobs. So please donate if you can, and watch the next video. So thank you again, Ondie, for joining
Thank
me.
you.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Great to see you.
Yeah, you too.